It was cold. Gray clouds hung low over the city. The wind swept across the highway, carrying the sounds of distant horns and the quiet hum of passing lives. On the edge of a towering overpass stood a woman, motionless. Her coat flapped in the wind. Her eyes locked on the empty air ahead. That no one noticed her, that no one had noticed her for a very long time. Her name was Rachel. Once a teacher, once a daughter, once a believer. But life, in its merciless unfolding, had stripped her of identity, purpose, and it started with loss. First her father, then her job, then the diagnosis, depression, anxiety, a slow unraveling. Friends stopped calling. The church stopped checking in. Medications numbed her. Therapy felt like talking to a wall. The world moved on without her. And eventually, so did her hope. The day she stood on the bridge, she wasn't thinking of ending her life. She thought her life had already ended. But then a car stopped. The screech wasn't loud, but it pierced the air like lightning. A woman stepped out, not young, not old. She wore a cardigan, her hair tied back, no heroic pose, no dramatic music. She just walked slowly toward Rachel and said one thing: God still wants you. No lecture, no scripture, no shouting. Just that. Rachel blinked. It was as if the world cracked open in that moment. The wind kept blowing, cars kept moving, but something inside her, something buried and ancient, stirred. Tears came, not from sadness but recognition. She fell to her knees. The woman walked closer, placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder. That simple human contact felt like grace. Like heaven touched earth. They sat on the cold pavement for 5 minutes, then 10, then an hour. No sirens, no spectacle, just silence and presence. Rachel didn't jump. Instead, she got in the woman's car. They drove to a diner, shared coffee, laughed, cried, sat without words. The stranger's name was Linda. She had once stood in the same spot Rachel had. 20 years earlier, she told her story: abuse, abandonment, addiction, rescue, redemption. Rachel listened, eyes wide, heart thawing. Over the weeks that followed, they met every Wednesday. Sometimes at the park, sometimes at church, sometimes on the phone. When Rachel couldn't leave her bed, Linda never preached. She stayed. One Sunday, Rachel walked into church. Her heart pounded, palms sweating. But when she looked up at the cross, she didn't see judgment. She saw arms open wide. She sat in the back. Then came the song she hadn't heard in 20 years, Amazing Grace. She wept not for pain, but for survival. She wasn't lost. She had been held the whole time. Weeks turned into months. Rachel began serving coffee after service. She wrote in her journal again. She painted. She volunteered at the crisis line. One evening, a call came in, a trembling voice on the line. Rachel said, "You're not alone. God still wants you." The words that saved her now saved another. Rachel never saw Linda again after that winter. She left a note: "You don't need me anymore. Just remember, when you feel invisible, He sees you." Years later, Rachel became a counselor. Her office was filled with paintings and candles. On the wall hung one quote: "God still wants you." A reminder, a truth, a rescue. And still, Rachel wasn't done. She started a support group at church. She called it Held Together. Women of all ages gathered: teachers, nurses, single moms, widows. They shared stories, laughed, cried, healed. Rachel never stood at the front. She sat among them, as one of them. Every Christmas, she left handwritten cards on strangers' windshields. Every card said one sentence: "You are still wanted." Once, a woman knocked on the church door during a storm. She held the card, crumpled and soaked, and whispered, "This stopped me." Rachel opened her arms and held her close. Years passed. Rachel aged. Her hair silvered, her steps slowed. But the fire inside her never dimmed. She wrote a memoir. It wasn't a bestseller, but one chapter was shared online. It was titled, "The Day a Stranger Spoke for God." That chapter was translated into 5 languages and read by people in crisis around the world. Rachel's story became a whisper in the dark, a light on the highway, a hand on the shoulder. And now, dear friend, you're here reading this. So let me be the one to tell you, you're still here. You still matter. You are not a burden. You are not forgotten. God still wants you. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Someone out there is on the edge, waiting for a reason to stay. Leave a comment, say something kind, and subscribe to Faith Light Stories, because sometimes one voice changes everything. Sometimes the words that save a life are only 4. God still wants you.